Joining us now, I'm very pleased to say, is former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Associate of Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, welcome back to the U.S. Report for 2025. And let's start here because we're starting a new year, but President Biden is saying goodbye. He yesterday delivered his final address to the American people, which was received as one of the worst farewell speeches in presidential history. Now, Mick, I thought this was typically Biden. He started out positive and gracious, and then he got dark, weird, and conspiratorial about all of his perceived enemies. What was your take on it?
James, it's good to see your face. Happy belated New Year.
Happy New Year
look,
to you too, my friend.
I watched the thing, and I had the same reaction, which is, oh my goodness gracious, what has he been doing to the country to the last 4 years to make it so exposed and it's so at risk as he laid out in that speech? You know, the whole mantra during the campaign was that Donald Trump was an existential threat to the country, that somehow the country is so weak that Donald Trump was going to absolutely take it over. And then last night, now it's an oligarchy that is an existential threat to the United States of America. Again, I say to these folks, you have been in power for the last 4 years. You're supposed to make the country stronger, not weaker. And what was this message on the way out the door? But look, he's an old man. I see so much of my parents in their last days that I see in him. I have nothing but sympathy for him. But it is time for him to go, and thankfully that time is upon us.
Yeah, and, you know, he has gone, but not without doing a fair bit of damage along the way, as you suggest. And you've written a great piece in The Hill magazine this week detailing President Biden's final weeks in office and how he's used them to implement and address a whole bunch of things that voters rejected back in November. Talk us through some of these sort of backdoor, behind-the-scenes actions that he's done that are going to saddle the Trump administration with a whole bunch of new problems trying to undo that legacy.
Yeah, well, a couple of different things, James. He took a bunch of our offshore drilling areas and took them off of the market, essentially, permanently. Now, we're going to try and figure out during the Trump administration how to undo that, but Biden tried to do that on the way out the door, take millions of acres off of the market for potential energy production. He then cut a deal with a bunch of federal workers using an executive authority he has to say, you know what? I don't care what Trump is going to say. You don't have to come to work, federal employees, for at least the next 4.5 or 5 years. You get to work from home. Even though the rest of the world is going back into the office, you get to stay and work at home. Wink, wink, nod, nod. We all know you don't work when you're at home, but that's the deal I'm giving you. And of course, we all know about the deal he cut with his son, Hunter, on the way out the door. It's almost as if the dialogue between him and the American public was this: oh, American public, please elect me or my surrogate, Kamala Harris, and I'll give you the most progressive policies I possibly can. The electorate looked at him and said, thanks, but no thanks. They elected Donald Trump. And Joe Biden's response to that is, oh, great. Well, listen, here, I'm going to give you anyway what you didn't want. And here's my gift to you on the way out the door. It's just bizarre. My guess is, James, on a more serious note, it will lead to a discussion in this building behind me right now, to a discussion about whether or not the presidential authority should be limited during this lame duck period. That's how upset Republicans are here in Washington over how Biden spent his last days in office.